You're 17 years old, and you've just killed someone for the first time. The rifle is still warm in your hands, and 1,000 yards away, a body crumples into the dirt. No dramatic music plays. No moral reckoning crashes over you like a wave. You just feel empty, which is exactly what makes you perfect for this line of work. Your story doesn't start with guns. It starts with hunger. Real hunger. The kind that keeps you up at night listening to your stomach eat itself. You grew up in a neighborhood where survival isn't a skill. It's a daily coin flip. Your father vanished when you were 8. Not dead, just gone. Swallowed by the chaos of streets ruled by men with more bullets than brain cells. That left your mother to shoulder everything. She worked herself to the bone, juggling 3 jobs just to keep a leaking roof over your heads and your younger brother in school. You were the smart one. Top marks, scholarship material, the kid who was supposed to escape. Teachers loved you. They saw potential. You saw a way out. But the universe doesn't care about potential. When you're 14, your mother collapses at work. The diagnosis comes fast and brutal. Kidney failure. Treatment costs more than your family will earn in 5 years. You watch her deteriorate in a public hospital where the doctors are exhausted and the medicine runs out before the patients do. You try everything legal first. You beg. You work double shifts at a warehouse, lifting boxes that weigh more than you do for pennies. You sell everything you own. It's not enough. It's never enough. Desperation makes you stupid. You take a loan from the kind of people who don't use contracts, just threats. The interest rate is criminal. Literally. You know this. You do it anyway because watching your mother die slowly is worse than any future consequence your teenage brain can imagine. She dies 3 weeks later. The surgery came too late. Now you're an orphan with a debt that grows faster than you can count, and a younger brother who looks at you like you're supposed to have answers. The collectors don't care about your grief. They care about their money. When you can't pay, they explain the terms. You have 2 options. Let them take your brother as collateral, sell him to people who traffic in human misery, or work for them. The choice isn't really a choice. Your first job is simple surveillance. You're small, forgettable. The kind of kid who can stand on a corner for hours without drawing attention. You watch. You report. You get paid just enough to keep the collectors off your back. You tell yourself this is temporary. You're lying, but you don't know that yet. 3 months in, they move you up. You've got something the others don't. You're smart. You notice patterns. When the crew needs to know police patrol schedules, you map them with frightening accuracy. When they need to identify undercover vehicles, you spot the tells nobody else sees. The boss notices. He's a man who built an empire on violence and fear, but he respects efficiency. He gives you more responsibility, better pay. You're 16 and already deeper in than most people get in a lifetime. Then comes the night that changes everything. You're doing a routine supply run with your crew when a rival group decides your block is theirs now. They don't send a negotiator, they send gunfire. You're crouched behind a car, listening to bullets punch through metal when you see your brother. He's not supposed to be here. He followed you because he's 12 and stupid and thinks you're some kind of hero. You watch the muzzle flash. You watch the impact. You watch him fall. Time fractures. The medics say he died instantly, like that's supposed to be comforting. You don't cry. You don't scream. You just go cold. That coldness never leaves. The organization offers condolences. They also offer opportunity. They need someone eliminated. Not a civilian, a target. Someone from the crew that killed your brother. They'll teach you, train you, pay you, turn your grief into a weapon they can aim. You should say no, walk away, find whatever scraps of normal life might still exist for you. Instead, you say yes. The training is brutal. They start you on stationary targets at 100 meters. You've never held a rifle before, but your hands don't shake. That coldness inside you makes you steady. While other recruits flinch at the recoil, you absorb it. Calculate, adjust. Fire again. Your instructor is a former military sniper who's seen 1,000 kids try and fail. He watches you put 5 rounds through the same hole at 300 meters, and his expression changes. He's found something rare. They teach you physics, windage, elevation, how temperature affects bullet trajectory. You learn it faster than anyone expects because you're not doing this for money or glory. You're doing it because the world took everything from you, and now you're taking something back. 6 months of training that should take 2 years. You're a prodigy, but not because of talent. Because you've got nothing left to lose. Your first real contract is the man who ordered the hit on your brother. They set you up on a rooftop. The target appears exactly when intelligence said he would. You control your breathing, settle the crosshairs. The trigger breaks clean. Through the scope, you watch him drop. You wait for guilt, for horror, for something human. Nothing comes. Just that same cold emptiness. You collect your payment and realize something terrifying. You're good at this. Better than good. Word spreads fast in certain circles. The kid who doesn't miss, who doesn't hesitate, who treats killing like mathematics. Within a year, you're not working for the local crew anymore. You're freelance, international. The deadliest sniper for hire that most people will never know exists. Your first international contract comes through an encrypted message. A politician in Eastern Europe who made the wrong people angry. The payment is enough to buy a house. You take a commercial flight, tourist class, looking like any other 20-year-old backpacker. The rifle components are shipped separately through diplomatic channels that don't ask questions. You assemble it in a hotel room overlooking the target's route to work. The shot is 800 meters through a third-floor window during morning traffic. You account for wind, humidity, the slight downward angle. The politician steps out of his car exactly when the pattern analysis predicted. You exhale halfway and hold. The trigger breaks. He drops. You're disassembling the rifle before the bodyguards realize where the shot came from. 48 hours later, you're back home like nothing happened. The money is different at this level. Not the desperate cash that paid off loan sharks, but wealth that insulates you from the world that created you. You move into a place with actual walls, not sheet metal. You hire tutors for yourself because the education you abandoned still matters. You learn languages, study ballistics at a level that would impress military engineers, purchase legal firearms, and compete in long-range shooting competitions under a fake identity, because the best way to hide is in plain sight. Between contracts, you're just another sport shooter with expensive gear. During contracts, you're a ghost who makes problems disappear from a kilometer away. The jobs blur together. A cartel lieutenant in Colombia, a witness in Prague, an arms dealer in Morocco. You develop a reputation in circles that don't advertise. The sniper who never misses, who never leaves evidence, who treats each elimination like a physics problem that needs solving. You're 25 when you realize you've stopped counting. Not the money, you count that obsessively. But the bodies. They've become data points, successful calculations. You remember your brother sometimes, but even that memory is fading, replaced by crosshair reticles and ballistic tables. Then comes the contract that changes the trajectory. A billionaire in Singapore who's threatening to expose a network of offshore accounts. The client is paying triple your usual rate because the target has professional security and rarely appears in public. You spend 2 months studying his patterns. He's paranoid, smart, varies his routine, but everyone has a weakness. His is ego. Once a month he plays golf at an exclusive club, refusing to let fear control his life. The course backs up to undeveloped jungle. You set up in the tree line 900 meters from the 7th hole. It's a Tuesday morning. Light wind. Perfect conditions. He's lining up his putt when you send the round downrange. The security team thinks it's a heart attack until they find the entrance wound. You're extracting through the jungle when you spot them. 2 kids, maybe 10 years old, who wandered off the path. They see you in full ghillie suit, rifle slung across your back, face paint turning you into something from their nightmares. You could eliminate the witnesses. It would take 2 seconds. They're frozen in terror, waiting for you to decide if they get to keep breathing. You lower the rifle slowly, put a finger to your lips, the universal sign for silence. Then you disappear into the vegetation like a hallucination they'll never be able to prove was real. That night in the hotel, you can't stop seeing their faces. Not with the coldness you've cultivated, but with something you thought you'd killed years ago. Fear. Not of getting caught, but of what you've become. The kids looked at you the way you must have looked at the men who killed your brother. Like you're the monster hiding in the dark. The money hits your account. Enough to retire on if you want it. You stare at the number and realize it means nothing. You bought your sister's safety with blood and lost her anyway. Bought yourself wealth and became exactly what you swore to destroy. You're 26 years old. You've executed 47 people across 19 countries. You're the best at something that has no moral application. A master craftsman of death. The next contract comes in. A journalist in Amsterdam who's investigating human trafficking routes. Easy shot, great money. You stare at the dossier for 3 days. She's 32, has a daughter. Writes stories about the people who fall through society's cracks. People like your mother was. Like your brother was. Like you were before you learned that survival sometimes means becoming the thing that kills you inside. You decline the contract for the first time in your career. The broker says you're making a mistake. That word gets around, that you can't just walk away from this life. You tell him you already did. You disappear the way you've made others disappear. New identity, new country, new existence. The money buys anonymity in a place where nobody asks questions about quiet foreigners who keep to themselves. Some nights you wake up calculating windage on targets that don't exist. Other nights you see your brother falling in slow motion on a loop you can't stop. You're alive and wealthy and completely hollow. The coldness that made you effective never goes away. You just learn to live inside it. A ghost haunting your own life, knowing that the person you were died the same night your brother did. Everything since has just been the aftermath, a shell going through the motions of existing. You saved yourself by destroying who you were. That's the real cost nobody tells you about. You can't undo the math. 47 people don't come back because you suddenly developed a conscience. The skills don't vanish either. You still read wind patterns without thinking. Still calculate distances by instinct. Still notice exit routes in every room you enter. The difference is, now you're using those skills to avoid becoming that person again instead of perfecting the craft. The truth nobody wants to hear is that monsters aren't born in a single moment of evil. They're built brick by brick through 1,000 small compromises. First you take the loan, then you take the job, then you take the shot. Each one feels like survival until you look up and realize survival turned you into the threat. You'll never be that kid with scholarship potential again. That version died in a public hospital while you counted pennies. But you also don't have to keep being the ghost in the ghillie suit. The weapon you became can rust. The coldness can thaw, even if it never fully melts. Somewhere right now, another desperate kid is staring at an impossible choice between morality and survival. The world keeps manufacturing people like you were, grinding them down until violence seems like the only rational response. You can't save them all. You couldn't even save yourself. But you stopped counting bodies. That's something. Maybe the only thing that matters. The deadliest sniper for hire doesn't take contracts anymore. He just exists in the space between who he was and who he'll never be, carrying 47 ghosts that never fade. That's the real scope you'll be looking through for the rest of your life.